From the Aishin Broadcast Studio, it's the Executive Spotlight.
Welcome to the AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today, our guest is Brian Leachman from Dealer Ignite. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.
Well, hey, we're excited to have you here, and I kind of want to dive right into some content. You know, it seems like every dealership everywhere, every day is having a sale of some sort. But why do event sales work so well, and what makes them different?
Well, I think there's multiple reasons that they work well most of the time. I think the first thing is the buy-in from the dealer. Like the dealer has to buy in on the sale. I think it all starts with that. The dealer has to get his team to buy in. And I say the dealer because it has to start at the top, right? The dealer has to buy in and then get his people to buy in. So it starts with that. And then I also think a sales event is a little different than just advertising to bring leads through the door, because it's more of a higher funnel targeted type of sales event where we're actually bringing people in for a different reason, not usually to buy a car, although we have ad offers in our direct mail campaigns. Typically they're coming in for a different reason, more so for a prize or something along those lines. The cool thing about that is we create an exciting atmosphere. We create a situation where people just see all the hype, the energy's high. So they're not necessarily coming in to buy a car, but they end up leaving with a car, quite a few of them, just because they get caught up in the excitement of the sale.
Well, you talked about the dealer buy-in there, and help me understand, like, what makes a dealership a good candidate versus a dealership that's a bad candidate to be successful?
Yeah, that's a pretty great question. Inventory is one. You got to have inventory. So that's the key. I touched on the buy-in. And you have to be open-minded, because a lot of these customers that are coming through the door, as I said previously, they're not there to buy a car. So they're more of a high funnel customer. The cool thing about that is when they're coming into your dealership, they're not there to buy. So most salespeople are looking for what? It's the big O. It's an opportunity, right? So if they have an opportunity to sit down and talk to somebody, hey, what are you currently driving now? How long have you owned that? What do you like most about that vehicle? What do you like least about that vehicle? So they're there for a prize, not necessarily there to buy. But when you start talking to them, well, you know what? My payment's a little high on this. I don't really have enough room in this. I really need a 7-passenger vehicle. This is 5. My family's grown, whatever the case may be. So it creates opportunities that you wouldn't normally see, because we're bringing people into the market that weren't currently in the market looking for a car. And typically when you do that, you run a higher gross per copy front and back, because you got a captive audience. You don't have somebody, if you're a Ford dealer or a Chevy store or a Nissan store, and you have your typical day-to-day customer, they're shopping you against a certain model if they're in the market against, 5 other dealerships. If you have somebody that comes in and they're there for a different reason, and you get them excited about buying a car, you connect with the guest, and you create a situation where they're like, yeah, I'll look at a car. I mean, it's a little different situation. And typically because of that, you can run a higher per copy. You just got to get the dealer to buy in, though. That's the biggest thing. The buy-in, I think, is the most important thing, because if the dealer's team's not bought in, it's not going to work. But there's a lot of dealerships that we've done business with for several years, and some of these guys net an extra $1 million or more off our sales events. Annually.
Wow. That's a great segue into my next question, because in talking to you before this interview, you mentioned that you had an absolutely incredible sale in South Dakota. Tell me a little bit about that. Share with our audience, what took place in South Dakota recently.
Yeah, so I've been doing these sales events for 22 years, and South Dakota was only the 4th time that I've done over $1 million sales event in 10 days. So done it 3 other times. Last time we did it was 2022. So they're rare to hit $1 million. It's a rare thing to hit $1 million at a sale. I'll go back to what I said earlier, and I keep saying this, it's the dealer buy-in. you have, here's the thing, you have to be open-minded, but you have to be bought in. Hey, I'm going to bring a team of professionals in. And I think that's the other thing with the dealer. The picker gets off, right? Like, because when you're hiring a vendor, if you get it wrong, especially with a sales event, it can go in the bad direction, and you don't want to do something like that again. You're like, oh my God, this was a mess. So I think who you hire to come into your store is super, super important. The South Dakota sale, the dealer was engaged. She got her team engaged. They had plenty of inventory, over 250 used in stock. But let me just say something. You don't need that many. I mean, I've done very, very good sales, $600,000 to $900,000 sales with 60 to 70 used vehicles in stock, and 100 plus new. So you don't necessarily need that many used vehicles to do $1 million sale. She just happened to have 250. Her team was bought in. Our team got there the day before. We had a strategic meeting with their team, their management staff. She was ready to go when we got there with inventory. I also think that South Dakota is one of those markets where it's very spread out. So you have to mail out really far. I mean, some of the mailers were going 90 to 100 miles away. People were driving an hour and a half, 2 hours. Yeah. So it's a very spread out market. I think one of the things that helped us at that store is, there's no sales tax. So when there's no sales tax on the purchases, that's a little more front end gross you can roll into each deal. We had a lot of happy customers. Like I said, the dealer was bought in. So I think it was a combination of a lot of things. And I keep saying that buy-in because I'm telling you, that is key. It's like, if you believe it's going to work, it will. And if you don't, it won't. It's really just that simple. So I think mindset is everything. But, we have some dealers that have been doing business with Dealer Ignite for 15 to 20 years. And, some of these guys, it's a real boost to their store, like a smaller store. If we can net a store an additional $600,000 to $1 million annually, I mean, that's a nice little savings account, because how the auto business is. It can be great, and then it can be tough. And when it gets tough, it's always nice to have a little money banked. So, but yeah, South Dakota, it was a great sale. I think the difference, like you said, was the buy-in. The buy-in was there, and the inventory was there. Sometimes it just hits right. You have a really good month in your dealership. Everything just hits right. So it was just one of those sales that hit right, and we were prepared. The dealer was prepared. The dealer's team was prepared, and we all worked together as one unit. And that's an unstoppable force. When that happens.
You mentioned that. You mentioned you've had some dealerships that work with you for 15 and 20 years. And, and I imagine, I mean, if I was running a store and you came in and we made $600,000, $900,000, $1 million, I'd say, can you come back next week? Right. But I imagine you can't do it every week. How do you determine what the right frequency is for a dealership? Like, what goes into that decision process?
A lot of it, Brian, is based on market size, right? Like, so if you go into a market and we do our campaigns by drive time to the store. So if you're in a more rural market, that's going to be a less frequent sales event, right? Because you don't want it to lose its luster. So I would say in a rural market, that's maybe a twice a year event. If it's a bigger market, more like a city market where the population counts are higher, then that's something you can maybe do up to 5 or 6 times a year. I would always recommend, and I always tell our dealer partners, you can't hit the same people more than twice a year. So if the market supports it, then the frequency can increase. If the market size is smaller, then we just kind of keep it around that 1 to 2. And I have some dealers that'll do 4 to 5 events with us a year because they have the market frequency or size to do the frequency. Then I have other dealers that'll do 1 to 2 events a year.
Wow. Well, I mean, with numbers like that, you're talking like, $360,000 a year on the high end to $6 million additional a year. I mean, that's a heck of a big amount of money. I do want to ask you about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So typically, if we net $1 million, obviously we front everything. So we don't charge our dealer partners anything to do an event. So if we're coming into their store, we basically front all of the advertising costs. We front, every expense. So the dealer is typically just paying us on production of the sale. So if the sale generates 600,000 in gross, we take a percentage of that. And then that's why I use that net number. But the cool thing for a dealer is typically most vendors, they want you to write them a check up front and say, hey, I got this great product. I got this service. It's going to do this for your dealership. And you're paying for that up front, hoping it's going to work because you believe in the guy that's sitting in front of you. With us, we show up. We don't charge you anything. We set up the event. You get your team to buy in. Ups start coming through the door. People start coming through the door. Car deals start happening. You start getting a lot of trades, which is another component of a sale that a lot of people miss. The vehicles we trade at the door, these dealers can't go to the auction and replace them for that kind of money. So they get nice quality trades. It helps increase their service business. And then we take our cut at the end. So to answer your question, if a sale does $1 million and I use a round number, typically the dealer in South Dakota, for instance, after our cut, after our sale, we're at 600 grand at that sale, 700 grand almost. I have to look, but somewhere between 6 and 700.
Wow. Well, you mentioned the trades and you mentioned the service. My next question is actually kind of related to that. I wanted to ask you, how does having a sale like this affect like customer retention in the service department?
Well, you're going to bring in 1,000 to 1,500 people that have never been into your dealership before. So it gives you exposure. In addition to the exposure, it also gives you data because we collect a lot of data during these sales. So not everybody that comes in buys a vehicle. If we have 1,000 to 1,500 people that come through the door, we'll sell, and I use a range because it depends on the dealership's inventory. It depends on multiple factors, but somewhere between 60 and 100 plus car deals in that 10-day period. And the cool thing is that's in addition to what they normally do. So we're not pulling from what they're already doing. These are just flyer mailer customers that are coming in. So that's additional. So you collect all that additional data. What they're currently driving. Even if they weren't in the market today, they know where your store is now. Some of these people that come in have never been there. Oh, I didn't know you were a Chevrolet dealer here. Wow, I own a Chevy. Maybe I'll bring my car here to service it. So there's multiple things that that help in addition to selling the cars. Collecting the data helps your customer retention. People knowing where you are helps your customer retention. Typically, most of the dealers we do business with, they'll sell another additional 50 plus cars off our sale after we're gone, just by turning over the data to their BDCs or their in-store sales teams.
Wow. So it really gives them the opportunity to grab customers that maybe they had no contact with before and even sell them after the fact. They're growing their customer base.
Correct. It happens quite frequently. Yes.
Well, the topic of dealer buy-in has come up, a few times, and inventory has come up a few times. But I want to ask you for a little bit more of your secret sauce. Let's dive a little deeper into the secret sauce of a successful event sale. Is there anything more you can share with us about what makes a sale a success?
Yeah, I think it starts with, and I'm going to say it starts with us, and I'm going to say us as an industry, the sales event industry, because there's companies that aren't run right? And if you're a dealer, you have to have a good picker. And I said this earlier, if you hire a bad sales event company, you'll never want to do a sales event again. I've had dealers tell me that, man. I've hired a bad sales event company. They've come through my door. They trashed my customers. They trashed my dealership. They didn't take care of the guests that came through the door. I would never do one of those again. So it only takes one time. But if you pick the right people to do the event, it can be a great long-term partnership for all involved. I think one of the biggest things is does the event company participate in chargebacks? If we sell a bunch of vehicles, you're going to have some warranty cancellations. You're going to have people that cancel back end. You're going to have various things that happen that adjust after the sale's over. One of the things we do at Dealer Ignite is we participate in all chargebacks. So that's one thing there that you can wrap your head around. Okay, this is a company that's going to stand behind me after the sale. And we do. And that's why we have a lot of long-term relationships. The other thing is your team and longevity. One of the things with these sales events is a lot of times these companies will just throw people together and show up at your store. They haven't worked together. They don't have the body of work as a team. And you know how a unit is. Any sales team in a dealership, any sports team, chemistry is everything, right? Working together is everything. And I think it starts with, a sales event owner, staffed event company owner like myself, structure, process. Every dealership I go into, it's a little different. The dealer operator has a little different set of rules, like, hey, we don't do this here. Or, another guy might say, hey, we do that there. So you have to have a good team that really knows the pulse of the dealer you're working with. And I think that is where like a lot of the secret sauce comes in, because, having a team that's done a lot of sales for a long time and is, developed a culture of salespeople. So typically our salespeople have worked with us for 10 years plus. Our two
Wow.
event closers, I've got one that's been with me 12 years, one that's been with me 9 years. I've got very tenured salespeople. And of course, I bring in some new ones sometimes. I mean, that happens, but because just like a dealership, you're hiring new salespeople, but then you have your tenured people. So I think the secret sauce is, running it like you would expect your dealer to want to run their store, right? Like, so run their business. So like, if for instance, I'm the dealer, I try to put myself in the dealer's shoe. And I know I'm getting a little off track here, but I try to put myself in the dealer's shoes. If I'm a dealer and I'm hiring a sales event company to come in and do a sale for me, how would I want it to be? I'd want them to take care of my guests, right? I would want them to treat my store with respect, right? I would want them to get along with my staff. I'd want them to work well with my management team, all those things. And I think really dealers should ask a lot of questions when they hire, whether it's me or somebody else. They should ask a lot of questions, because I think where it goes south with event companies is when they just hire somebody. They talk to their buddy at a 20 group and he's like, oh yeah, I use this company and they did a good job. But that guy runs his store completely different than the other guy runs his store. So I think every dealer needs to do their own diligence, but I think the secret sauce is longevity, structure, process, just doing things in a way where you're safeguarding the dealership, looking out for your client, because I consider every dealer we do business with a client. And I'm just not in it to come do one sale and not see these guys again. That's why we have a lot of long-term partnerships. I do have some guys that do sales with us that say, hey man, it was just too overwhelming for me. My team just couldn't handle all the traffic. And I don't understand that sometimes, because you're in it to make money and sell more cars. You have a dealership, right? But, there's a lot of politics in some of these stores. So I get that. But, so I again, the secret sauce is just, hire a company that's been doing it for a long time, that has a solid team, a solid staff, that participates in chargebacks and is going to have a structured sale and follow the rules and guidelines of your store. I think that's the biggest thing. So if that helps, I know I got a little long-winded on that because I could talk about it forever.
Hey, that's a good answer. Good answer. I mean, sometimes people are not so open to giving away the secret sauce. So I appreciate that. Brian, is there anything more you'd like to share with our audience today before we go?
No, just thank you for having me. If we Dealer Ignite can help your dealership sell more cars, you can reach out to me direct at 844-844-2900. You can visit our website at www.dealer-ignite.com and just put in an inquiry. And if you just want to have a conversation to see if we're a fit, then let's discuss it. We'd love to help your dealership sell a bunch of units and be more successful.
Brian, I really appreciate you coming in today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you having me.
And thank you for taking the time to join us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today, our guest has been Brian Leachman from Dealer Ignite. We hope to see you again on a future episode. This one's Over the Curb and Burning Gas.